than you ever thought you did. Did you get on here? Ripe Colors now live with me too. Thank you. Um,
I figure yeah, I could sort of read that button, so I was like, okay.
okay, so Jeffrey's with us too. Anyway, this class is an instructional class just to talk to you about the real basics of numerology and how you can use it. Now, the reason Jeffrey's with me is this is the same course we teach on the first day of when we teach tarot, because the numbers 1 through 9 and the power of the numerology is so strong that it follows all modalities. So it really can help you sort of define a lot of things. And so my goal for you today, and it's Jeffrey's goal too, is that by the end of the day, you are able to figure out your life path, your soul number, your expression number, and your inner self. And that's right. And
Yeah,
outer self.
because numbers are super important, and
Right.
if any of you watch my tarot regularly, I do, monthly readings, etc. And then I'm always looking for the numbers. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always looking. If I have a lot of threes, there's a lot of creativity going on. If I have a lot of fives, a lot of change going on. So I'm always looking at the numbers. The numbers are super important in tarot. It's not just the images.
No, it's not. One time when I was reading in the vintage store, I did a Celtic cross, which is 13 cards, right? That's how many are in there. And I did it for a woman, and I got all 5 10s.
Wow.
Wheel of Fortune, cups, wands, coins, and swords. And 10 means things are coming to an end, a culminate. And I looked at this woman, I said, I don't know what's happening around you, but boy, it's going to be over. But the thing is, there's a great release when you have all the 10s,
Yeah.
because it means you're moving on to something else.
Right.
And all the impediments are moved away. And so I tried to explain it to her, and she said, oh, well, thank you. I've got a lot of things going on within my family and stuff. And I'm like, maybe you don't even know. And I called a friend of mine who reads cards too, and I said, I just laid a 13 card layout that had all 5 of the 10s. And she said, I think I'd ask that woman what direction she's heading in, and I'd go the other way. Thing. So learning the numbers can be very important to you, and it'll make a lot of things.
Right, and this is like this is really our first class of the tarot classes, which is 6 weeks. So the first class is numerology that we're
Mm-hmm.
going to do today. And then we get into the Fool's Journey, which is the explanation of all the major cards and how they form a story, how one thing leads to another, leads to another. That's all the major cards.
Mm-hmm.
Then we do another class on numbers. We do another class on the
Matching the
character.
numbers to the suits, to the 4 suits.
Oh, the four suits.
Mm-hmm.
Another one we do on the characters, the king, the queen, the page, la la la. So it's very intensive. It's a lot of fun, and you really learn everything you need to know about tarot. We also give little samples of a 3 card reading, a 4 card reading, the Celtic cross, and then we get to practice. Because once you learn it, and it's like, well, I need to learn everything all at once. It's like it happens slowly. So,
Right. And okay, let's look at or put this to the stage. Okay, and this may be kind of small. I don't know what kind of screen you're looking at, but this is how to calculate your numbers, and this is actually calculating my numbers. And you see this grid at the top, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 across the top. And then you just put the alphabet below it. This is what you're supposed to have your papers out for. And A is 1, and B is 2, C is 3. You can see all that. And then the whole intention of the whole intention of numerology is each number has a vibration with it. 1 is the pioneer, 2 is doing things in partnership, 3 is communication and creativity. 4 is building a solid base. 5 is freedom or chaos. It depends on how well you've done 1, 2, 3, and 4. 6 is hearth and home. 7 is spirits and analytical things. 8 is money and power. And 9 is the year. 9 is the time when you're getting rid of things that aren't necessary. And so I would ask you to look at this. So if you can set that little grid out for yourself right now, that would be helpful to you. And then I'm going to go to my.
And the
Okay.
name that you use is your given name. It's
Right.
not married name. It's your given name.
It's the name that's actually on your birth certificate.
Exactly. So even if you don't use your middle name, like I don't use my middle name. I don't even sign my middle name. But with numerology, I use it.
And I never used my middle name, which happens to be Jean, until I went into reading cards. And I wanted to have a way. So when this was before cell phones and caller ID and stuff. So when I came up with using my name, Nancy Jean, and not giving my last name because I didn't want people tracking me down at work, tracking me down at home, or anything else. Not that they're not lovely people, but everything has its place. Plus, if anybody ever calls and asks for Nancy Jean, I know exactly who they are and what they're looking for. So, birth name, Linda Bishop, show. Birth name, because that's the name you chose to come in with. Even though the other, now you can do both of them because the name you were given as you're adopted, since I assume you're an adult, once that name was put in place on you, you had 12 years to assimilate it and make it your own. And,
Yeah, so it's the name on your birth certificate, Linda.
right. And Linda, Bruce, I'm about to hand you all the information you're going to need to be able to figure your own out. So, oh, you're just a child, 10 years younger than me. Woo. Okay. So these are the numbers we look at. Zeros you don't often run into, except that they're zeros, but they're kind of the infinity. It's like the Fool in the tarot deck. It's the infinity. It's nothingness. Everything can appear out of a zero. You add anything to a zero, and it becomes that number. But the energy of the zero is absorbed into it. 1 is first, pioneer, starting point, bringing things together. 2 is dual, pairing, and one-to-one relationships. 3 is to communicate with others, more than 2 at a time, talking and creativity. 4 is reality of life, building structures. These are the people who really touch things and feel things in the world. 4s added. It tries to create balance. 4, when you're dealing with things that are in 4s, you're always trying to build a solid foundation so you can have balance.
Right.
5
or a table or something, or a cube.
Okay, and then 5 is being within a group and wanting freedom or chaos. A lot of people who have 5s as their life path, when they do past life readings, they'll find out they spend a lot of time in imprisonment. So this whole life is to stay free, to be a nomad, to be able to move. 6 is home, hearth, harmony. 6 is like the super mother card or the super parent card, the super person who takes care of all your comfort needs. That's what's going on with 6s. 7s are spiritual growth, safety, security, and also a lot of analysis. And 7s can get very isolated within themselves if they're not capable. 8, if they don't watch out for that. 8 is wealth, and health. It's just abundance of all kinds. 8 is just a really wonderful number to have, and 9 is um, you're attaining the goal. You're at the finishing of things. I happen to have a friend who her life path is 9, and all the other 3 numbers in her name mean 9, come out to be a 9. And the only problem with that is she doesn't have another number to push her into starting the next thing. And that's she and I have discussed this several times. And that was the biggest struggle in her life, was to learn how to bring things to an end and move on to another level. But mostly 9s mean you're really finishing stuff, but you're really at the point of finishing, but maybe not finished with. And 10 is completion. Like I said, if you get the 10, it's completion. You're kind of done. So that's
these numbers really relate to the tarot cards. And
Mhm.
when you take our class starting Tuesday, you'll be able to see how it makes sense, how all the 8s sort of fit into that, all the 9s sort of fit into that. Um, um, I don't know, boundary sort of. That's the
Yeah.
box it's in. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, now I'm going to put back up the one on how to calculate it. So now you've got your little, this is called the Pythagorean number chart. And you can look it up. If you don't catch it today, you can catch it, Google it. You'll find lots of stuff about it. So then what you write out is your whole name. And in the case of this is, now you know more about me than most people do. My maiden name was Nancy Jean Ruddle. And you calculate that all out. And then for this is how you do your soul and your outer expression and your inner expression. That anyway, you take all these numbers and you add them across. And in my case, I have a 6. I'm having trouble reading. My screen is so tiny on where I am.
Make it bigger.
I know. Yeah, how do I do that? Get rid of comments, right?
Yeah, it'll make everything much bigger.
Yes, that helps.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the way you work numerology is you always reduce everything to a single digit. So when you add my soul across, it's a 1, 5, 5, and anyway, it comes out to be a 16. How did I get that to be it? Hold for 1 second. I'm going to go find this document in my computer.
Okay.
I should have.
And I'll show you all something.
Okay. Jeffrey will show you stuff.
I can't read.
Jeffrey, you and I are great between your cataract and mine.
All right. I know my cataracts. So look, this is my name, right? This is Jeffrey, if I'm just doing my first name. So I add the 1 and the 5. That makes a 6. So that's a 6. Then I add the 2 6s. That's a 12. Then I add, I don't know what number it is. It's a 7 and a 5, whether it is or not. Mm-hmm. That's another 12, and then a 7. And then I add again. So that's 18 and 19. So that's 37, right? That's the lowest number. So I add the 3 and the 7, which is a 1, because it's equal to a 10, and the 0 doesn't count. Mm-hmm. So I've broken, make believe this is my whole name. So I've broken that down to a 1. So that's how you get the numbers.
Okay. There. Okay, I found my thing. I'm printing it right now, guys. I'm sorry this is so. You would think I would have been better together, but we're much better together when we teach the class. Among other things, is we send you a PDF of all this stuff so you can print it out and look at it in your own little.
Yeah, and we have PDFs for every single class. There's a PDF for, well, you know, what do the kings mean? What does, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So it's, you know.
It actually is together. Much more. Now, we're not doing the best job of this, but anyway, the way it adds across is the soul is a 1, a 5, a 1, a 3, and a 5. And when you add those all together, that makes 15. And you compress the 15 into a 6. You add the 1 and the 5, and you get a 6. And that's my soul. And that's that I like to take care of everybody and run a good house. My inner self, which is the part of me that I feel inside that may not be out in the outer world much, is a 5. Anyway, it ends up to be 42. And it becomes a 6. So I have an inner self of 6. And then I have an outer self outer self is where you add the soul is just the vowels. The inner self is just the consonants. And the outer self, the one everybody sees, is all the letters added together. And when you add all my letters together, they come out to be a 3. And a 3 is also my life path. Now, life path, something you'll hear people say. Somebody commented she had a 33 life path in the comments. The way you figure out your life path, it's the same thing. You get. I'm so glad everybody has cell phones now, because now everybody has a calculator. I go back to when teaching this, when there were not cell phones, and when there were I had to
write it by pen and paper.
Pen and paper, like old grade school stuff.
Which is the way, it's not that big a deal.
No, it's not. And especially life path, it's not hard. Mine is 5 and 2 and 1949. So the 5 and the 2 and the 1949 all equal 30. And 3 plus 0 means a 3. So my life path is to be a communication, always generally working with more than 2 people and building structures and being a leader in group building structures. So that kind of tells you where you are on all this. And also, the other thing you can do is, if you see the thing I wish I had a pointer on my computer, but when you see that little page that says count the number of occurrences, you count how many 1s are in your name, how many 2s, how many 3s, how many 4s, how many 5s, how many 6s, how many 7s and 8s and 9s. And in my particular case, I have no 4s show up, no letter that's related to a 4, and I have no vibration of 8. And I can tell you from my life experience with what that's done, is those are considered karmic challenges. Those are things I bring in that I have to work with all the time. And it is something I work with all the time, because the 8 is money and power. And the 4, and this class has just been a shining example of it. Creating a solid structure so everyone can follow what's going on. It's not that the structure wasn't there. It's just I didn't plan to present it. So now, and I had someone ask about the 33, the 11, and the 22. Those 3 numbers, if your number is reduced to like a 33, leave it, because you're either 33 or you put the 2 3s together and you become a 6. And some people think folks who are 22s and 33s, they didn't have to reincarnate. You're a volunteer if that number shows up for you. And it means that you kind of always sensed there was a lot more to how things work. And they're very spiritual and open. I happen to have 2 children that have 22 life paths. In my marriage, which I am now far enough into, my inner self became a 22 because of the letters changed. Now, when you change your name, if you do, doesn't matter whether you do it legally or whatever, it takes 12 years for that name to kick in and be completely, the vibration of all that to be completely a part of who you are. And I'll give you the one best example. I've never known people who change and especially men don't change their names much. But J.D. Vance has had 5 names in his 39 years.
Really?
Yeah. He had a birth name, and when he was 12, his father had died. His birth father had died, and his mother wasn't terribly fond of him anyway. So she took his name out of J.D., the D, changed from like Dennis to David. And then when he was in his early 20s, he changed it one more time. And then Vance is not his given name. It's not a name on anything. He just went ahead and changed it to Vance. And I know people, and I've spoken to people who would figure out the numerology in a name and change their name to that. And
I'm going to get right on that once my vision gets better.
I mean, really. But you know, to me, that's like a whole lot of mental machinations. Work with what you got. You chose it when you were on the other side. So you kind of wonder what J.D. Vance was choosing on the other side. If you couldn't even come up with a name. And now the name he's got now, he's had less than 5 years.
Weird.
So, yeah, I know. But one guy I worked with who had changed his name, and he talked, the numerologist, he believed you can change your name, but it still takes time for that vibration to work its way in. Well, by the time I knew him, he was very successful. He had an Italian name. And he also, well, to tell you how much this guy wanted to change who he was, he moved to Texas and he took elocution lessons so that he wouldn't sound like a New Yorker. You know, and when I met him, he spoke basically Midwestern English, the kind that, you know, sort of the stuff you normally hear on the news. And when I was a kid growing up, almost all the newscasters were from the Midwest because they didn't have a Southern accent. They didn't have a real Yankee accent. And I don't know what kind of accents people have on the West Coast. I mean, everybody sounds, I can understand all of them. But there are people who will really go to that point in their life to change that part of their life instead of going inward and changing what really they need to change, what's going on inside. So then what other sheets do I have that you won't be able to read because the print's too tiny? Jeffrey and I are about to get big. Whoop, here we are being big. And then we're going to be small again. Poor Jeffrey was sitting in the waiting room because I didn't realize he was there because he was buried under all the documents. Oh, this I wanted to do because I'm real proud of this. And I know you guys are probably sick of hearing about my class, but not as sick as you're going to be if it doesn't make, let me tell you. Okay, comments about the class. And this is the first one that's up here. It says, to be honest, I wasn't sure if I took Nancy Jean's Tarot course because of the 60 plus years of her hands-on experience in the various mystic modalities that she'd honed and would incorporate in explaining Tarot to us. Nancy Jean will teach and weave different mystic modalities into the readings that include people, symbolism, timing, scenarios of the past and present, and future readings. Nancy Jean shares a scrapbook of evidential experiences of the Tarot interpretation and has an accuracy and the power of the Tarot. Not only is there great content in this class, but it's fun to participate. I feel I was very privileged to meet both Nancy and Jeffrey on this level and to continue to practice weekly with my classmates. This is a lady that created Black Cat Tarot, which is a reading circle that she has. And then another person, that's AP. This is from Beatrice. Nancy Jean's Tarot class stands apart from other classes I've taken. She's offering insights into how numerology connects to the Tarot and how we can use it to enhance our readings. She is very well versed in many divinatory, I'm not good at that word, modalities, divining modalities, and we were all strongly encouraged to use our own intuition. Throughout the course, she was so helpful and answers any questions that might come to mind. Several other students and I, this one was also part of Black Cat Tarot, have formed a study group, and we're practicing together once a week over Zoom. Nancy, Jean, and Jeffrey sometimes join us, which gives us pointers and continues our growth in reading. And that's true. I do go over there and join them. I didn't join them last night because I decided to go last night, and I didn't see it till after they were done. But I apologize, Beatrice, but I've taught this since 1979. And I really, and Jeffrey really feels, this is why Jeff invited Jeffrey in, because he and I read together all the time anyway. I invited him to come be part of this. Is he has the same feeling I do, except he doesn't read reverses and I do. And I thought that was an interesting thing for students to learn. And Jeffrey has encyclopedic knowledge of the Rider-Waite deck. That's the one thing you have to do for the class. You have to pay the tuition and you need to have a Rider-Waite deck.
Yeah, so the Rider-Waite is the traditional deck.
That's the one you see
You
most
know,
often.
it's, yeah. And there are lots of versions of it. It's the easiest one to get.
Yeah, and it has all of this. This is the one that was published in the early 1900s, and it has all the symbols that everybody else has.
Pretty much every other tarot deck is, well, not pretty much. Every other tarot deck is based in that deck.
Except a couple, and they're so weird you don't want to read them. I mean, not kidding.
Yeah, you know.
I mean,
yeah.
And
you know, the iconography and the colors, etc., are, there's a lot of clues in there, and that's how you really, it's through that the interpretation and the understanding of those things that you begin to develop your own understanding and your own interpretation of cards, of tarot. It's through that.
That says, I took the class and it's excellent on all levels.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And does Y count as a vowel? Yes, it does. When Y substitutes for a vowel, like in the name Lynn, it will be, if it's a vowel, you use it as a vowel. Or if it's like Sally and it makes the E sound at the end, it's a vowel.
Yeah, like both of us are. It's Nancy and Jeffrey, and the Y counts as a vowel.
Mm-hmm.
The sound.
Okay. I'm cheating on y'all because I can't transfer it to you, but I have a spreadsheet calculator that I can put the numbers in. But there are, and I'm going to talk about that right now. Let's see if there's any. Let's see if there's any. Okay, this is about Jeffrey. Jeffrey does a healing modality called IET, which has not a whole lot to do with what we're talking about right now, but that's another thing he does. Except you can't fix your own eyes.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, IET is this modality, you know, and I was thinking about it today when I was on the roof. You know, I think both for Nancy and I, we're teaching this so that you can be in touch with your own intuition, with your own understanding. And the IET also, it's really you empowering you. I'm just the guide. So I look for guides and angels, and you ask for what you'd like to receive and what you'd like to release. I'm just the guide.
Right.
You know, and because it's really about your own light doing the work, your own light, you know, and your own intuition. That's why we're teaching this class, for you to be in touch with your own intuition so you could utilize it in the rest of your life. And everybody's like, oh, what did you put in that recipe? It's like, I don't know. My angels told me to do it.
Well, that's kind of true. But the other thing it really wakes up your intuition. In the two quotes I gave you, there was AP, the one who said she really tussled with joining the class. She talked to me when I'd given it earlier, and she didn't show up and didn't decide. And so I leave it alone. I'm not going to browbeat you, except today I'm going to browbeat you into coming in, because I'd really like this class to go on the 8th. And I already have a few people in there, but I like the class to be 8 to 10 people if it can be. Yeah. I will run it with fewer. I'll run it with one if that's how it ends up. But and it won't be, because I have 2 other people who are joining right now. But
we both love to teach. That's the thing,
right?
You know, because sometimes, you know how when you're a kid and like maybe in 1 grade you have like a history teacher who's so excited, he goes, oh my God, do you know what the Romans did? Look at these roads, you know. And then,
Mhm.
like the next year, you have one who's been teaching for 40 years and is so over it, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah, well, this is what the ancient Egyptians did. I don't understand. Well, read the book. We're not there.
My 12-year-old grandson is in that exact situation because on the year when children couldn't go to school, um, his aunt Susan paid for him to use the same homeschool curriculum she'd used that we'd trained her with when she was in school. And it just so happens that that year is the year that in this curriculum they teach world history to the kids. And it was fascinating. I mean, I loved that year teaching him because it was fascinating. I mean, they brought up not just Western European oriented history,
Yeah.
but they studied Oriental and
Yeah.
Asian history. They studied the history of the Pacific. They talked about, we don't think about this, and I had a lot of history and I watch a lot of history documentaries, but they taught that if you look at when Japan was feudal, so is the Middle East, so is Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And so the native tribes of our continent never got to that point.
It's
But
a whole different animal. Yeah,
right.
The Americas are like a
It's another
standalone.
thing.
Yeah.
So, and they would point out how when they were doing this in Italy, when they're having feudal fights, and when they were being feudal in England and being feudal in Europe, they were feudal in Japan and they were feudal in China. And the other thing they brought up, which struck my grandson very strongly, was that the biggest changes in structures in society normally were caused by a massive plague, illness, or some change in the weather. And of course, that's how we got out of the feudal realm in Europe, was the plague, the Black Plague, and all the other plagues that came across. They changed the structure of the society so much that they couldn't. It created the middle class, is what it did in Europe. So anyway, I'm not going to get into all that, but it's a fascinating. And this little 12-year-old kid, he's got all this racing around in his head, and he's in a history class with a teacher who thinks it's more important that you spell the name of the city exactly as he wants it spelled, instead of understanding the concepts. And Ian keeps bringing up broader concepts into the history class because this guy's teaching history the way I learned it, which was war to war.
Right.
And Ian finally said to him one time in class, the teacher said, "I don't know where your son gets the idea that he can say this to me." But Ian said, "It's more than wars that change society."
Well, yeah, it's geography.
Yeah, well, I know. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. So anyway, I'm just saying.
But the point is that we really love to
teach, and we want you to be Ian.
Yeah, and we want you to be excited. If you want, you could dress like a different tarot card every week.
No, I'm not going to go that far. That's kind of some costumes you could come up with. I could. But for those of you who are more interested, numerology is really, and if you I study sacred geometry too, and there's 1 through 9 in sacred geometry, and well, when there's 0, there's nothing there. When you have 1 point, then you only have, your whole world is flat. There's only that perspective. Then when you have 2, they can communicate with each other. Then when you have 3, you begin to have a base you can sit on. And it builds like that. I'm not going to get into the whole thing about that.
And the numerology also pertains to the 12 houses.
Right.
In your chart. The 1 is your physical body. The 2 is your goods. The 3 is communication again. The 4 is home base. It's like that. 5 is work. 5 is society. Yeah, it goes.
And you just you'll see it over and over again, and you'll say, how can they remember all that stuff? Well, because you can learn how to understand it, so it's really related.
Yeah, so, and it's kind of like the more you practice, it's like the better you get at it. I understand what kind of dishes an onion can go into because I've been cooking a long time.
Right. And you know what? Not to put tomatoes in because they're too acid and they'll eat it up. I mean, it's the same thing. Okay, I'm going to show you this. This is going to flash by, but just learn the basic thing you need to understand is there is a Pythagorean numerology function out in Google. If you put in And this is the website. It's a French website. You can store it over in your, functions you want to keep. You can put anything into it. It will calculate the numerology.
Leave it to the French to organize it. That's brilliant.
Well, it's like the best dowsing charts are in France. That when I first went to Subtil 3 years ago, it had 150 charts. It's got 700 some now.
Oh my God. And so the interesting thing too about numerology, this goes back very, very ancient. So in Hebrew, it's called gematria. And every Hebrew letter has its own vibration and its own number. And its own number. And in fact, in the
It's in the Kabbalah.
he uses the Hebrew letters as they relate to numbers are very, very important. It's like the building block of everything. And then the Greeks did the same thing, and their alphabet also relates to numbers. So this is a very ancient system. This is the new incarnation of it with Roman letters, but this is a very, very ancient system. So it's not like, oh, we just made it up off the top of our head.
No, and if you think Pythagorean, that probably woke up some nightmare of your high school years, because he's the one who also came up with all of the formulas for geometry and other things. That's what Pythagoras did.
Right.
Very smart guy. I never particularly appreciated what he did. But.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I have books and books on him. Unbelievable. Because he had a lot of ancient Egyptian knowledge too.
Right. And this is where the spiritual meets our world. So you can see it around you every day. It's where the world throws out signs and symbols to you.
Yeah.
That you can use.
Yeah.
I'm going to go over and look in the comments and see if there's. Yeah, Kelly. A square plus B square equals C. That triangle, that's Pythagorean.
Right.
So that's. Okay. Where can I sign up for this class and on whose site? You go to www.crystaldirections.com and you'll see a little thing at the top and it says shop. And if you go in there, it's got a complete description of the class. It explains all about what you need. And as soon as you sign in and pay, it lets me know. And then I contact you immediately by email. And if you cannot get that to work, I've had one woman who got hung up on that. You can get a hold of me at crystaldirections.nancyjean@gmail. And you can look that up if you go to my YouTube site. It's all over there. And, if you have a friend who's always sort of talked about doing this, but I've owned a deck for 20 years, but it never could make sense. I worked with
I
Kelly.
just put it up. I can't believe it. I'm so proud of myself.
Oh, good. I put, I helped Kelly, who's the Canadian who has the campfires and different things. When I met her, I met her through Allie, and she said, I just can't figure Tarot out. And I said, if you'll give me 3 weeks, because if I'm doing 1-to-1, I can do it in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's different.
I said, if you give me 3 weeks and real interest, we'll see if we can't get you to be a reader. And she says it all the time on her show. She also reads my garden, but Kelly always says, the only reason I can read Tarot. And she said, I looked at the cards and couldn't figure it out. And she said, by the second class she had with me, because we were condensing.
I think also what we really teach you to do is, how do I say it? We teach you how to teach yourself in a way. I think, instead of, this is this because I said so, you know what I mean? Because I'm the daddy, that's why. It's like, we teach you to do this, to learn how to do it yourself, because the interpretation of the cards, every single card really has a million meanings, and it depends on the ones around it, but it's really about your own interpretation of what it really means, how it interacts. And that's what we're trying to put fire under, right?
Right. We're
But,
trying to,
everybody can make a salad, and somebody puts radish in it, and some put it's celery. They're all salads. One of them is crunchier, one of them is spicier, one of them is more, I don't know, more varied, more
Mhm,
green, more red.
mhm.
So it's kind of like that. It's almost like everybody wearing the same outfit, but somebody puts a necklace on, or somebody puts a scarf, or somebody makes it shorter or longer,
Mhm.
or the hat. Yeah, you see what I mean?
Yeah, and
It's
we
about
teach
owning it for yourself. That's
and
what
and at first, I think the hardest thing to do when you're trying to learn sort of a whole new vocabulary
it is.
is keywords, and we try to make it as simple as possible and
Right.
tie you back to keywords. And also, I'll tell you what you're going to do eventually is you're going to find a deck you really like. Like I happen to like Eileen Conley's tarot. It's a basic tarot deck, and it looks like it's got all the same symbols we have, but like this is the Five of Wands in this deck. And when you read that Five of Wands, you know it's five, and you see that there's struggle going on, and you know that five means chaos or change or freedom. And you can read this card whether, no matter what you were trained on. And looking for my Five of Swords because that's my most different. Well, this one's good.
I
This,
just did that. I have a little series. I just did that this week.
mhm. And this is the Eight of Swords. And what I tell people when they pull this, every one of those swords you put in the snow. So it's up to you to pull it out. Mainly. I mean, not always, but so that's how you sign up for the class. It's through my website. And
Yeah, it's easier if we just do it on one website.
right. And the thing is that you get documents. You get a lot. Gino talked about you get lots of documents. We actually take the Rider-Waite deck and put the cards next to it and put explanations. You end up with like a whole book of material.
Right, because the thing is, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it.
Mm-hmm.
If take the class and then read with us and the other students, and then you read on your own, and it's like, well, I'm not, because there's always going to be a card or two. It's like, I don't know, so you can go back and look it up.
Yeah, and Karen, this is right in the tarot deck I just showed you. There's no death card. It's called transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also no devil card. It's called materialism. And if you really think about
Really?
the devil, it really is materialism. And the reason, Karen, you'll appreciate this. The reason I got this deck is I was reading in a wine bar, and after a person has had a couple glasses of good red wine, last thing they want to see is death. The
Well,
devil.
I think giving it a couple of bad red wines, the same thing.
I know. Well, yeah, no, the bad red wines are worse. But where I work, they only had good red wines. So, and you'll find as you go into other decks, if you understand the Rider-Waite, you can do anything. The other thing that's happened from this class is I've had 2 or 3 people who really got a sense of their own intuition and how it functions. And one of the people, the woman who said she wasn't really sure about taking another class, and then she took my class and da 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 da. She is now studying some energy healing through a guy that's international, and I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about him. But I talked to her, and she said, this is the last time I'll be coming to the tarot group because I need to focus my energy that way. But she said she never would have understood that she needed to be with him in that class if she hadn't done tarot. She was always sort of wavering. She'd hear this and she'd hear that. It really is a chance for us to help you concentrate your intuition. If you create a tarot channel, fine. If you just want to read with friends, fine. If you just want to read for yourself, fine.
Even, because I talk a lot about the iconography. I know a lot about the iconography. It's a long story of why. So if you learn one or two new things about a certain symbol, and you happen to see that symbol on a truck going by
Mhm,
or online, it's like, oh, there's something deeper going on here because it's
mhm.
all symbols. It's all symbols.
That's how your guides talk. My guides talk to me that way.
Yep. Yep. It's all symbols. And the ancients really understood that. Those are the first books that were printed when they had the printing press. Aside from the Bible, the first books that they printed were alchemy books. And they
Right.
were all picture books so that people could
Mhm.
understand because a lot of people didn't read. So this is how far back the stuff goes. And there's a lot of alchemical symbols.
Yeah, I was talking yesterday with a friend of mine who went to England last year for her 65th birthday, and she just fell in love with stuff. And we were talking about York, which I had told her, do not miss York. Go to York. If you skip some other towns, go to York, because York is the best medieval town in England, where you can see what you think England looks like. And I told her to go to York Minster and that she'd really love it. Well, it ends up, we were talking last night. This came up last night. In the ceiling of York Minster is an astrologic chart,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns so you can see where all the planets, and it only has the planets that they had at the time they built the minster.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh my God." So she looked it up. She called me back. She said, "You're right. I'm so sorry I missed it." And I said, "It's huge. I mean, it's so big. It's like you have to kind of get back to get the perspective that that's an astrologic chart." But that's how integrated what we do was in the older society in a more spiritual time. That's why the fairies and the elves went away, because people quit being tied to the energetics that were
To
going
the
on
earth.
around.
Yeah.
And that's why they're coming back, guys. So whoop, whoop, get ready for that too. Okay, do you want to take a couple questions, Jeffrey? We have 12
Sure.
minutes. Okay. I'm going to hide post. Post your questions in upper caps so that I can find them. Because Sharon Sipe is probably the best moderator known to mankind.
Yes. God bless you, Sharon.
But, and thank you for the person who posted about John Minnie. My wrist is much better. I don't have to wear wrists anymore. It's just a weird thing that happens to my arms sometimes. Oh, Earth Starch signed up. Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeffrey and I aren't going to do a telethon where we stay here till we get 10 people, by the way. We're going to keep begging. Oh, I'll show you one thing I found that's interesting.
I mean, I have to clean the house. So if we're on here for another 2 hours, it's fine.
No, I know.
really don't want to clean the house.
Okay, I want to show people this image of Helene. This is what the space station picture took of the U.S. the night after Helene had gone across.
You know,
all
really
those
weird.
should be filled with light.
I knew somebody by that name when I was a kid, and she was a real firecracker. She just did whatever the hell she wanted
That's
to do.
one of my daughter's middle names.
And I remember her parents, I don't know where they were, but we were really young, and it was like it was a big car. It was like a Cadillac, like that kind of car. Maybe it was a big car. She didn't have a license. We got in the car. We drove all over the place. We used to do that like every weekend.
But that's how big this storm is. And I
Deep
saw
into Georgia.
Huh?
Deep into Georgia. Yeah.
Oh no, it's into the Carolinas, way up here.
I know.
This got cut off, but and I saw a picture of, you know how big we thought Camille was? Camille was a third of the size of this storm.
Yeah, well, this is what's happening. The storms are getting bigger.
Right.
That Sandy that hit New York, it went from freaking Georgia to Maine. It was crazy.
Yeah, and they've got one headed towards them now.
All right. I'm ready to take questions.
Yep. There's no questions out there, Scott. We've explained the world.
Jeffrey.
Scott, I'm sorry. I get in my chair and I get comfortable.
Well,
And
because I think you're used to being live with Scott. That's what it is.
That's true. Oh, I will tell you another factoid while you're thinking of questions. You know, my son, Sean, is political consultant and he does shows on CLSB Politics, which are kind of fun. And they're only 15 minutes long. He does not go on and on and on like his mother. But he got from the Brennan Institute a summary of newly registered voters in the state of Texas. And between January 1st of 2024 and September 1st of 2024, 580,000 new registrants, not somebody just changing an address, new registrants in the state of Texas. Ted Cruz only won by 240,000 last time. And to do that, he will, and he got that because they took 300,000 names off the voting rolls in Houston. So I so hope for Colin Allred. And the other thing was it showed the counties that had grown in numbers of people who were registered to vote and the counties that had stopped, and the areas that totally supported Cruz were a deep, deep purple, which meant they'd had a great loss of voters. And the counties that voted totally against Cruz last time had all turned bright green, which is the color meaning more people have registered. So you can figure that most of those 580 some thousand were in the big counties. Okay, we got a question.
Yay.
It's a political one, Jeffrey.
It's all right.
Will J.D. Vance take over for Don Don soon?
Sort of a yes/no in a way.
There are people who would like that.
I get a big no.
My guides have been screaming no at me. But I'll tell you that one thing's my guide did send to me, and this is politics. No. He's moving on.
Should I show you what I got?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have the 3. And this is a lot of times a card of heartache. It's raining. And then maybe there's like a different opportunity for him. But look, this is a card of walking away. So this is a no.
Mm-hmm.
This is a no. This is a real big card of walking away. It's actually kind of an eclipse card. What used to satisfy me isn't satisfying me anymore. I'm moving forward. You know, and with this one, no. But there might be like, maybe he was offered something like out of the blue. And that could be a personal thing. It was like, because this is an offer sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it. Besides the fact there's no mechanism to really handle that, honest to God. I mean, I know that one for a fact. I got a no too, and I'm not even going to go into it because the further I stay away from that energy, the better. We got a numerology question. Yay. Does your personal year begin on January 1st or on your birthday?
Good question.
Okay, good question, because if you believe that you chose your astrologic chart and your name and when you came in, then the way I was taught numerology is your personal year starts on your birthday. And to figure out your personal year, get your pens and pencils out. You add your birthday to your birth month, and then you add the digits of the year you're in. And we're in an 8 year. So in the case of my birthday, it's 5 and 2, which is 7. 7 and 8 is combinedly 15, and that simplifies to a 6. So I'm in a 6 personal year. Personal years are other fun things you can learn how to read about people, because that's the one I use when I'm talking to telemarketers. And Anyway, but there are, like Ann Perry, who's an internationally known numerologist. She and I have had a long discussion about this, and I explained to her how I looked at my life patterns and how it always changes on my birthday. And she said, then you have a legitimate reason to believe that's true. But what numerologists are formally trained to believe is your personal year begins on January 1st. So it's whatever age, whatever your month and year would be added to that. So it would say that I've been back in a 6 year since the 1st of January, and my life does not feel like that. Okay, now we got another question. Angela, I have been to Stratford-on-Avon, and it is a beautiful medieval city. It's just not as big as York. I'm a 1 in numerology. What does that mean for me? It means that you're a pioneer, that you're going to be your natural leader. You do not mind doing things alone. I'm a 3. I didn't even go to movies on my own till I was an adult. I just didn't.
I have a lot of 1 also, so I'm
Yeah, and you'll just take off and go do. Jeffrey would just move to Mexico and say, "I'm moving to Mexico." I'd be so terrified that I wouldn't. There's a lot of chicken in me, guys. It may not seem like it, but I prefer to think it's caution. Anyway, but 1s are pioneers, leaders, and the negative part of a 1 is they can get so into themselves that they can't open up to other people.
Right.
Okay.
It's a beginning. It's leadership. It's unity. It's direction. It's a 1.
I don't understand the question, but Darlene, but you said your birthday is 22/11. That must mean her life path. If you're working from your highest self, your 22 is very spiritual, very involved. Almost and a lot of times they won't even have to open up to their intuition and claim to people they are. People will just understand they are. And she wanted to know if she should use the 33 or 6. You're 33 if you're dealing from your highest high self. When you go into the 6, it's actually the negative 6, which is a person who can be very mean and not sharing. So there is a negative side to numbers. And Angela says she's traveled the world alone. She's fine. I don't like to go anywhere alone. So
yeah, for me that sounds like heaven.
Yeah, see, to me that's like,
oh, let's go to this place. I don't want to, but
okay.
everybody else is going.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
And Earthstar will pay.
Where did you go, Jeffrey? Oh, I don't know.
Tennessee may go blue. We don't know. We just can all hope that people will see the light. And I think there's going to be more of a huge, it's like when everybody kept saying there's going to be the big red wave last time, and it ended up being a tiny little red dot instead. I think there's a lot of voters that don't tell anybody who they're going to vote for, and I don't blame them. And I think there's a lot of behind the scenes Kamala voters that have. Anyway, and Angela, I don't know. I'd have to talk to you about your house number is 33, and it's not been very lucky. There's a lot of factors in that other than what your address adds up to.
Yeah, yeah. So my where I live, it's a 369 because the building is a 3.
Mm-hmm.
My apartment is a 6, and the zip code is a 9.
Huh. Well, we'll figure it out one day. Anyway, thank y'all for coming. I hope that kind of opened it up for you. And like I said, you can.
Yes, and thank you for signing on and up. And if you're still on the fence, come and join us. It'll be fun.
And we tape each class, so if you think, "Oh, I can't make,"
if you have to miss one,
you'll get it taped, and we'll catch you up in any way that we need to. So we don't abandon you and leave you standing on a street corner. But this is the Pythagorean numerology that you can actually just type the numbers and letters in, and it'll give you the answer. So, well, y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Blessings.
Bye-bye. I forgot to push